Why are they doing it? Why are they coming to learn warfare? Are they coming because they believe in the ISIS mission? Are they coming because...
Well, part of it is the media play that ISIS and their groups are doing are quite successful because they take cherry-picking bits of the Quran and saying that this is what the Quran stands for, which is completely and utterly untrue. And they've been very successful in new media in reaching out to youth all over the world, frustrated people, young people without jobs, and being able to create a recruit. The other part of it, don't forget, is they're offering very good salaries. I mean, part of the problem that we had with ISIS at the beginning, and part of the reasons why the airstrikes were, I think, so needed, is the oil industry alone inside of Syria, especially around Deir ez-Zor, was netting them about $1 billion a year. So the salary for a recruit joining ISIS is about $1,000 a month, which is the equivalent of a colonel's pay in our armed forces. So you had these different aspects of how recruiting was working. What we're doing to sort of fight back now is to try to explain to people that all these things that you're hearing as the manifestos of, for example, Baghdadi, have nothing to do with the Quran. But part of the problem of the major recruiting issue, and I know that, and I'm sure in America this in certain sectors doesn't go down well, is that the core issue in the Middle East is still the Israeli-Palestinian one. And until we solve that, that is a major recruitment for extremist groups. Now,
you told me, for example, that when the war in Gaza was taking place, recruitment by ISIS went sky high.
Absolutely. So,
because they use it even though it's not connected.
All extremists, all these jihadist groups use the injustice of what's happening to the Palestinians in Jerusalem as a rallying call. Now, I know there'll be a lot of comments made after I say that that's not true. It no longer matters whether it's true or not. What is true is that that's what the jihadists use as a recruiting element. And actually, since the airstrikes have happened, I think the amount of recruiters that have crossed the border into ISIS have gone up to about 3,000. So when you saw young women and children and the high death count inside of Gaza, we saw an immense amount of recruiting of ISIS into young people into ISIS.
When you look at the forces on one side, the United States, the coalition partners, you, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, you look at the goals of Iran. Why is this a tough fight? ISIS has money, clearly. It's able to recruit, clearly. But this is overwhelming force that's possible. Or why am I naive?
No, well, again, you've got to look at the complexities of what allowed them such a success right at the beginning. They were limited inside of Syria. The Syrian regime was on purposely not targeting them. They were targeting all the moderate units. So they were allowed to grow and establish themselves.
And they did that purposely obviously, because they wanted to see ISIS grow.
They wanted to see, well, it was other groups, and out of that came ISIS, so that they could win the PR game, to get the swing vote behind them, to show that, you know, there's people a lot worse than us. And they were very successful in doing that. When they entered Iraq in July, the uprising that happened in western Iraq was not because the Sunni tribes had any affinity for ISIS. It was the frustration with Baghdad for many, many years, because there was no, the Sunnis felt there was no political inclusion into the future of Iraq. Something that we had discussed with, not us just as Jordanians, but the Americans, with Baghdad for many, many years. And it was that frustration that exploded with the entrance of ISIS into Iraq in July. With President Abbadi now, Prime Minister Abbadi now is the new Prime Minister, he has reached out to the Sunnis, and I think the atmospherics are better. But again, there's a time factor. If he doesn't deliver some of these promises, then to the Sunni tribes that they are part of Iraq, that there is a future, that could backlash. And so, I mean, I sort of trying to explain to an American audience. We have Kurdistan. In a way, we have Shiistan, but we actually have never had a Sunnistan. So unless we solve that part of the puzzle of Iraq, then the Sunnis are always going to feel isolated and to an extent betrayed.
Yeah, but Sunnis are the best people to explain that to them. I mean, you've got to promise them that the Shia prime minister is going to reach out and wants to have a relationship, but the people are best able to do that because of history, I assume, is fellow Sunnis.
To an extent, but again, I think there are a lot of Iraqis, whether they're Kurd, Shia, or Sunni, that believe in a united Iraq. And you've got to give those people the benefit of the doubt. But there are other elements of play inside of Iraq. You mentioned Iran. I mean, Iran, I don't think would like to see a strong, vibrant Iraq for obvious reasons. So there is always internal play and pressures on Iraqi government to make sure that the Sunnis don't get sort of the things that they want in the way that they want. So that's an uphill struggle. But going back to ISIS, I think that the Prime Minister Abadi is committed. He has bureaucracy that he has to fight through, and we're all giving him the benefit of the doubt, and I hope that he does deliver. But again, the clock is ticking.